Yep.
Sure. Call to order. Flag salute. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Open Public Meetings Act statement. New Jersey Open Public Meetings law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies of which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of the Act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted at the Augusta, Branchville, Lafayette, and Sussex post offices, and notice sent to the New Jersey Herald Star Ledger and the clerk of the boroughs of Branchville and Sussex and the townships of Frankfort, Lafayette, and Walnut. Mission statement. High Point Regional High School, in partnership with staff, family, and community, is dedicated to the quest for individual excellence. By fostering high standards of achievement, we prepare students to become responsible and productive members of a diverse society. Roll call.
Mrs. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Ancliffe?
Here.
Mr. Dunn?
Here.
Ms. Keller is not here. Mr. Kehoe is not here. Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Rowland?
Here.
Mr. Veely?
Here.
Mr. Boyku?
Here.
Dr. Ripley?
Here.
Executive session. A motion will be made. The High Point Regional High School Board of Education enter executive session to provide an update on personnel and legal items which are exempt from public participation pursuant to New Jersey Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, Open Public Meetings Act. Any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential will be made public when appropriate. Minutes of the executive session will not be disclosed until the need for confidentiality no longer exists. The board will reconvene in public session in the cafeteria annex at the conclusion of the executive session. I need a motion.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion to return to public session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Finished business. Don't have it before us. Approval of minutes. Regular meeting minutes of June 20th, 2017. The executive session minutes of June 20th, 2017. Any motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Abstain on the regular session and yes on the executive session.
Mr. Kehoe?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes to the regular meeting and abstain to the executive session.
Mr. Boyku?
Yes.
Mr. Veely?
Yes. Move on to presentations. EA is not available this evening. Curriculum instruction, Daniel?
That was rather quick, thank you. Once again, pleased that our microphone is working well.
Hello, is this on?
So it's, we're here in the summer, and of course we have some wonderful reminders of what it's all about, even though it is summer. Just a very limited number of items this evening. Our park scores have come in, but they're embargoed. So I had some conversations with the Department of Education. They are for internal use only, they're not for public display. They want districts to be allowed to evaluate the results, make decisions and reflect on them before they become public. They don't want districts to compare themselves to one another before each district has a chance to dissect it. So we're dissecting them right now. And we have a significant number of teachers coming in and revising curriculum based upon these results. As I have shared with the board and the public before, and I think we're all aware, this incoming freshman class needs to pass Algebra 1 on the park, and that same cohort needs to pass English 10. So they're now starting to say that you must pass this to graduate, which gives the test more validity, but adds a little more, I guess, pressure or significance to it. And we're looking at this year's results, trying to make quite significant assurance that we're better prepared for more success. We want our students to meet this threshold and to be in a strong place to graduate. So we will have the full reports in August. Right now, they're only for internal consumption. However, what is kind of gratifying is our summer curriculum workshop days. Teachers are coming in, and we're giving them the scores, and we're meeting with them, and we're breaking down the scores, and we're redesigning the curriculum so that we can be sure that we have improvement. Mrs. Anderson had recommended that we do this, and we put this survey out. It got a limited response, but I'm excited that next year it will be put out in a more opportunistic time, and we'll get better feedback. Mr. Talamay used surveys with students, teachers. This survey was for parents. They're so quick, they're so easy to become part of the social media culture that you can give instant feedback. And to get them from graduating parents is beneficial because there's a sense that perhaps these parents will be more candid. Even though it is anonymous, after 4 years of reflection, it's open. There are some quantitative questions on a 1 to 5 scale. How pleased were you with a few things? And then there's an opportunity for feedback. And we take that feedback very seriously. So we'll continue to survey our stakeholders. I mentioned at recent meetings our participation in AP and how successful the AP testing was. On July 5th, New Jersey received their score reports. This is a pretty big day for AP teachers. We had 16 AP teachers who anxiously await this day, and after a year of work, you find out how well your students did. And we had increases across the board this year. The fourth year of our expansion, we've seen a steady increase in student performance. In particular, our 9th grade world history class. Many people thought we were crazy to have this many students embrace a college curriculum right out of 8th grade. And Mrs. Barbara Fasano has seen nearly a 100% increase in her passing rate. 62% of her students passed this test as 9th graders, which really was exceptional. I met with her yesterday and reviewed her scores, and we're very proud of her, and she was very excited. School-wide, still not as high as we'd like it to be, but our passing rate did go up. What we've looked at in the data, and College Board provides us with a mountain of data that we've been sifting through. Before we expanded our AP program, we had this many students that were taking AP courses and scoring 3, 4s, and 5s. We still have those students performing at that level. So research outside High Point and our own internal metrics tell us high-achieving students are not hindered if a somewhat less accelerated student is in that class with you. Not always the case. Naturally, if you math can be challenging when you have students that may not be well suited for it, but it's working. And the students that are in those accelerated classes, even if they're getting a 2, are engaging in a more rigorous curriculum and being challenged more and being better prepared for college. I'd like to point out the difference between a 2 and a 1. AP scores come in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I believe that many of our teachers who have students fail, there's a lot of 2s in there. And our message to those teachers is a 2 is oftentimes about a relationship. Because when a student gets a 1, sometimes they say, well, maybe it just didn't work out and there was this real disconnect. A 2 means that they worked hard and showed success and achievement, and it also means that the teacher and the student had a relationship where they worked together to work hard. So passing is important, but every little piece of data we get tells us a story, and this summer we're putting a great deal of that data together. That's our 5-year summary. The documents that I provided you with are a 5-year summary where you can see our performance relative to the state and global averages. And I also provided for you a sample copy of a score report. I required this summer that all 16 AP teachers come in the summer and they meet with myself or the supervisor or both of us, and they go over the data. And if you look at the data, what we try and find when we meet with teachers is where are there some outliers? Are there some things that you're doing exceptionally well in some areas where you can easily attack and make improvements? And those conversations have been productive, and those score reports oftentimes can be quite telling. It just will tell you perhaps, number one, it's a reminder of the specific content, how many questions come from each area, and then it tells teachers where they might be able to make improvements. So we're working on that. Again, that's data-driven curriculum revision. So we're asking teachers to come in and reflect, and they have to fill out a survey after they meet with us when the day's over. What data did you find helpful? How did you use that data to revise your curriculum? What changes will you make for next year? Keeping in mind that we're still emphasizing participation and access above the passing rate. We want kids to be wildly successful, but we still believe that access is more important than.
And Seamus, when we talk about passing rate, I always want to screen this. We're talking about the national test that's given, not passing the course that these kids can get.
Correct.
They pass their course, they've got their 5 credits, yeah, it's reflected in their GPA. The grade that they get on their report card is different than the AP score.
Absolutely. They're not necessarily related. They correlate oftentimes, but they're not related. Students will build a stronger college profile by taking advanced courses and getting A's and B's. Colleges don't want to see C's, but if you take an accelerated course load, many times these are seniors, by the time they apply, the results of this test, even if they get a 2, which is fine if that was their best, doesn't even go on to the college. It's also important to note, I'm glad that you mentioned that, we require every single student enrolled to test. Most schools don't do that. So when you see our passing rate relative to national averages and state averages, keep in mind at those other schools, you have a wide variety of policies of optional testing or only students who maintain a certain average may test, etc. I met with all AP teachers at the end of the year and I surveyed them, and one of the questions was, how do you feel about our mandatory testing requirement? And overwhelmingly they supported it. And these are a lot of teachers who perhaps were not in support several years ago, but there seems to be a common mindset that what we're doing is hard, it's challenging, it's not perfect, but it's working, and they believe that having all students test is, they want it, they like it. The challenge if you don't have all students test is that you might have a student that's frustrated or who struggles in January, say, I'm not testing. Well, now the climate in your room is significantly changed. These 5 students over here say, I'm just taking it for credit, rather than the teacher and the whole class kind of focusing, gearing up and saying, we're all in this together. So that's our quick look at our AP scores. Service learning. I do not want to speak poorly or ill of the thousands of hours of community service that our students have done in the past decade. I want to remind the community that that will continue. When someone heard that we were adjusting the graduation requirement, they made a comment like, oh, community service doesn't matter. And I said, no, it matters, and we'll still promote it, and it will still exist. However, students from this year's graduating class came to the board earlier this year, and the arguments they made were consistent with what we've heard from other students and from parents and teachers, which is community service is wonderful. However, as they named it, mandatory volunteerism was perhaps overly structured, overly bureaucratic, overly mandated, and there was a sense that it wasn't always authentic. It sometimes became a paper chase of getting a form signed, writing an essay, and there was a monotonous nature to it as opposed to authentic community service. So our vision for service learning is that it will be embedded in more areas throughout the curriculum and mapped throughout the curriculum, that students cannot avoid engaging with it, that we will also do more to promote our highest achieving participants. And when I say high achieving, what we'd like to recognize is not just someone who does a great deal of community service, but someone who broadens the amount of students and the opportunities for students, who recruits other students to be involved. We will pilot next year a community service day for our graduating seniors in the spring, and we want to have some enhanced recognition for our top members of our students who do exceptional things in the area of community service. We also want to take groups such as Honor Society, Pass It Along, Interact, Pride. We have a dozen or so groups, extracurricular groups in the building who are charged with providing community service. And we'd like to have them work together and provide some synergy so that they're working to make sure that all students are engaged. Community service or service learning should be overseen by classroom teachers, and it should be part of the curriculum. When you think about students in a sociology class learning about geriatrics and then taking a trip to a nursing home and meeting elderly people that they wrote letters to, that's the kind of service that we want to see more of. That's overseen, that's authentic, and that's engaged. Some of the goals of community service were to have students who had not previously had access to community service to be brought into the fold. And we don't believe the way we were doing it was serving that mission as best as we could. Right? We know there's going to be students that are off the charts with their community service, and they're always going to exist. We want to have a more structured curriculum aspect to service learning so that we, the leaders of the building, are guiding more students through the service learning process. And it's going to be a process because we're going to be able to substantiate to you as the year goes on the activities that we've done and the measures we've taken to embrace it and not let it slip from our culture as something that we celebrate. So the way it's required specifically as a graduation requirement, we are sunsetting. Thursday will be the second of 3 days in July where we are inviting co-teaching teams to come in for a curricular workshop. Bill Percy and Kirsten Sabo, when I went in to observe them this year, I didn't know who the special ed teacher was, who the math teacher was. Actually, I did know. But if I didn't know them, I wouldn't know. There was a time when teachers co-taught where the subject teacher taught and the special education teacher sat on the side, and when a student with an IEP needed help, they came over and helped them. The contemporary mindset is we've got two qualified, exceptional teachers in the room. They've got to both be heavily invested in the whole process of the room. So teachers are coming in for their workshop day. They're working with their partner. They're looking at some materials. These, Bill and Kirsten, are turnkeying a training that they went to that the board committed money towards. And one of the things that I think is important about recognizing them is that we support professional development at an amazing level. And we need teachers to go to professional development, and when it's good, to have an obligation and an expectation to come back and turnkey that. So it's not $3,500 for you four to go here, it's $3,500 for you four to go there, find what will work, bring back and share it. And that's what Bill and Kirsten are doing. We're also, one more thing, we'll have a peer observation. All co-teaching teams will have to go in and see other co-teaching teams to gain new perspectives and to observe best practices. And just a couple of things for the good of the order. Last night, I did a kick out of that. Mr. Diodino and I traveled to Citi Field, and when they showed us our seats, the two gentlemen in front of us were none other than the mayor of New York City and Cardinal Dolan. So we were actually 3 rows behind them, but they were right in our section. So we went down to introduce ourselves, and Mayor de Blasio turned over, and he'd heard about High Point's high-achieving academic. But it was trying to do some fun summer things with our administrative team, and that was certainly quite interesting. I'm a Cardinal fan, by the way, and the Cardinal actually grew up in St. Louis. So it was quite interesting. We had 2 Cardinal fans and 2 Met fans. Let me get a chuckle out of that. Chris Koppelmeyer, just to speak about him for a moment. He came here in 1994 with 1 section of physics. I believe we now have 5 sections of AP Physics. It's one of our most popular classes at High Point. Chris teaches 6 AP classes, and he'll be coming in August to study and prepare to offer a select group of kids Calculus 3. And I need to find out if any other schools offer that. We may be offering the highest level math in the county. Chris is a rocket scientist with a Princeton degree who is a pretty special member of our faculty. So he was recognized, he was nominated as one of New Jersey's teachers for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science. So congratulations to him. Just a few of these tweets. Even though it's the summer, our student ambassadors continue to alert their fellow classmates of what's going on. The window is now open to change your schedule, or athletic physicals are taking place, et cetera, et cetera. Over the weekend, I was with someone who is the social network director for a large district in Philadelphia, and I gave her this program, and she's going home to incorporate that at her school.
So when we see Robbie's tweets all the time, it's because he's been empowered as one of our groups of.
Right, so if you look at the very top of their statement, at HPRHS _Robbie,
Yes.
that's his specific account linked to High Point. They've been vetted, they've been trained, and they've been trusted. It's not, and my friend asked me, I can't do this, what if they do something? Well, they're kids, and we trust them. And we give them some, we give them trust.
And guidelines and tell them.
And guidelines, and these kids are, they're fantastic. So there's Julianne tweeting out Happy July 4th. It's really been a fantastic program, and we'll soon see a district.
And they're called our ambassadors?
Our social media ambassadors,
Right.
Mr. Fadlin and Mr. Talamay, worked with these students to get them up and running, and they're fantastic.
No one does.
That's great.
This is, we believe that, I don't know the words, but I don't want to overspeak, but we don't have schools who we're trying to emulate. Schools are emulating what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting what our staff and our administration is doing with our students.
So my friend she's full-time social media director at a large suburban, successful, affluent school, and she said this is exactly what we want, but I'm having a hard time getting stakeholders to buy in and tweet. And I shared with her that every time I present, I usually end with that slide, and I talk about the fact that as a parent of a student here, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, you can just glance at our page any day you want, flip through it for a few seconds, and you'll see 25 or 30 really neat, holistic. You really get a broad picture of the great things that go on at High Point. And there's Philip, and he graduated, so we're excited.
Move on to action items. Curriculum instruction, Ms. Anderson.
Okay. Items 1 and 2, we have the faculty attendance rate on attachment A1, and we have the suspension report on attachment A2. And then I'm going to move items 3, 4, and 5. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve professional development activities listed on the attached roster, A3. Recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the school self-assessment for determining grades under the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act as presented under Title IX, presentations attachment A4. And that it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the following revision to the program of studies. That's what Mr. Campbell just gave us, beginning with class, graduating class of 2018. Service learning activities will be embedded throughout the curriculum.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion, questions? I have one, James.
Yes.
On that self-assessment, I think we got a fabulous score, and I don't care about hundreds, I really don't. But in those areas where we missed a point or so on that assessment, is there an explanation for it? Do we care? Are we gonna, I don't honestly, do we care?
Self-assessment
Yeah.
at the hip.
Yeah.
Mr. Campbell is not affiliated
Oh, I'm
with
sorry.
that. That's okay.
Is that you?
Yeah, well,
No, Dr. Ripley.
I'm intimately familiar with the process.
So when we don't quite hit the top number, I mean, sometimes it's unavoidable, and I understand that.
The standards are sufficiently rigorous that, in my opinion, anyone giving themselves 100%, I respectfully find it somewhat dubious, because the standards are, let me give you an example, that every teacher has received say, 10 hours
That was
of
one of-
small group instruction
On suicide prevention. That was the one that,
and has done so on 3 different occasions throughout the school year, and they've taken an assessment, thereby demonstrating this slide, demonstrating proficiency so as to be able. That's the degree
yeah.
that some of them require for you to give yourself, say, a 4. And what we have implemented is a thorough, exceptional process that does not incorporate enough to where we would get ourselves 100%. I'm very proud of our program and what we do, and I think the numbers of not only HIB investigations, but HIB instances, but instances of violence, vandalism, and instances of suspensions have demonstrated that our programs and our vision of restorative practices have resulted in really a student culture that is exceptional.
All right, thanks. Anybody else have a question? Roll call?
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Wojcik?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Beely?
Yes. All right, personnel, Mr. Dunn?
Yes. Personnel, I'd like to move items 1, 2, and 3. Item 1 is recommended by the superintendent that the board approve Patricia Osorio, 4 fifths full-time equivalent teacher of Spanish for the 2017-2018 year at BA Step 7 for $47,002 pending receipt of all required paperwork and criminal history review. Item 2 is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve Jessica Stearns as a substitute teacher for the 2017-2018 school year, pending receipt of required paperwork and certifications. And item 3 is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the appointment of Barbara Zapili as a long-term substitute teacher of English at MA Step 1, $62,362, prorated, effective for September 1st, 2017 through the end of the first semester of the 2017-2018 school year. Seeking a second. Any discussion on any of those items? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kehoe?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Wojcik?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. Beely?
Yes.
Okay, item 4. I'd like to move item 4. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves Mr. Seamus Campbell as Director of Curriculum and Instruction for the 2017-18 school year with an annual salary of $127,850, effective July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018. Second. Any discussion on that?
Yes, I'd like to say that I'm very happy with the work that Mr. Campbell's been putting in. He works tirelessly. I get the privilege of spending a lot of time talking to him about curriculum, which I love, and he loves his work. And he's done a great job working with our staff, working with our administration, and making sure our students' educational experience is awesome. So thank you.
Are you able to straighten out New York City problem?
All night I kept hearing people shouting, fix the subway. So.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Wojcik?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Yes.
Mr. Beely?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to move items 5, 6, 7, and 8 together. Item 5 is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education rescinds the appointment of Jody Brooks as a bus driver effective June 19, 2017 for the remainder of the 2016-2017 and full 2017-2018 school year. Item 6, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves a revised job description for behaviorist effective July 18, 2017. See attachment B1. Item 7 is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the appointment of Crystal Norman as custodian second shift effective September 1st, 2017 for the 2017-2018 school year at step 5, $42,060. plus $9.50 for shift differential. And item 8 is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves a revised list of all certificated teaching staff for participation in summer curriculum mapping and/or RTI program development at the workshop rate of $150 per day or per diem rates as detailed in attachment B2. Days will be coordinated by the Director of Curriculum and Instruction and shall not exceed a total cost of $35,000. Second. Okay. Any discussion on any of those 4 items? None. Roll call, please.
Mr. Boykin,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Ratcliffe,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Rowland,
Yes.
Mr. Keough,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Veely,
Yes. Alright, extracurricular, items 1 through 3, the one being recommended that the superintendent of education accepts with regret the resignation of Tom Sikorsky as rehearsal agent for the 17th school year. Number 2, recommended by the superintendent that the board of education approve the following extracurricular appointment for the 17th school year. Deborah Wester, assistant field hockey. And number 3, recommend that the board approve the disposal of 2 sets of soccer goals that are obsolete. Motion.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on 1 through 3? All right, roll call.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Ratcliffe,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Rowland,
Yes.
Mr. Keough,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Boykin,
Yes.
Mr. Veely,
Yes. All right, policy, Mr. Dunn.
Policy. I think we have one item.
This is one, yeah.
Okay, so, item 1 is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the second reading of the following new policies. Policy 2415.06, unsafe school choice option, that's an attachment D1.1. And policy 8350, records retention, and attachment D1.2. Seeking a second. Second. Any discussion on the policies? Seeing none, have a motion, please. Or, roll call, please.
Mr. Ratcliffe,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Rowland,
Yes.
Mr. Keough,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Boykin,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Veely.
Yes. Negotiation, I think we told us that last month that we wrapped up negotiations with the AA, but in case we didn't. Negotiation with our, right, I don't know if we did discuss that.
Well, we approved the contract in June, so
Okay, all right, so.
Yes.
that would indicate that we
Yes.
wrapped up.
All right.
Are you being sarcastic?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I don't know if we discussed it.
I know.
But thank you for your clarification, Dr. Ripley.
He's
Moving along.
Okay.
Buildings and grounds, Mrs. Anderson, even though there's nothing. Discussing buildings and grounds.
Not at this time, thank you.
Finance, Mr. Rowland.
All right, under finance, I'd like to move items 1 through 7. Item 1 is the report of the Board Secretary, Business Administrator for June 2017. Item 2 is the report of the Treasurer for June 2017. Item 3 is report of transfers and minimum expense transfer report for the month of June 2017. Item 4 is a list of payments dated June 30th through June 18, 2017. Item 5 is a list of accounts for June 2017, attachment G5. Item 6 is the disposal of some books, and attachment G6. And item 7 is tuition contracts as listed.
Second. Any discussion, 1 through 7? All right, roll call.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Rowland,
Yes?
Mr. Keough,
Yes.
Mr. Dunn,
Yes.
Mr. Boykin,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Ratcliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Veely.
Yes. All right, item number 8 under finance, recommended that the board approve the use of surplus in the amount of $128,000, $128,193 to maintain budgeted appropriations for the 17-18 school year. This is in accordance with revised state aid notice indicating a decrease in state aid and pursuant to NJSA 18A 2281 and NJAC 6A 23A 13.1 3B.
Second.
I move, Charlie second.
Yes.
All right, discussion on item number 8?
I'd like to recommend the board consider using some of the, not all of the surplus towards that loss of funding. And it's my understanding that the funding methodology, if I'm not mistaken, will be going forward. That's correct? Am I mistaken? So this is something, a permanent cut that's going to happen going into the future. If we can't start accepting it this year, how are we going to do it next year?
Well, I think we had a big cut this year. It's not like we had to start cutting, we had a huge cut this year.
I understand.
And my concern is, I'm not a financial guru at all, but we cut any more out of the budget, it's on top of a huge cut. It's not like other schools who didn't do what we did. We had a huge cut. And I think if we have some money in capital reserve, is that the correct term for the place that this money is?
No,
What's the name?
surplus.
Surplus. Capital surplus, okay.
No.
Just surplus, just surplus.
Budgeted fund balance.
Okay, thank you. If we have some money there and we can do that, because, and again, we talk about this because I'm not clear on this, but once we cut the budget, then our next budget is based on what we've cut it down to this time, and if things don't, is that true? Am I saying things that are not accurate?
The only thing that you will really be beholden to is a 2% tax levy increase.
Okay.
So
So when we cut this down, does that cut, that doesn't mean anything? We can only increase 2%, which we have not been doing, obviously, we haven't been doing that either. I just feel like we have some money, and we've already cut this budget so deeply. I would like to give the district a break and not go even further than we have.
If I'm not mistaken, in our 17-18 budget, wasn't one of the cuts the capital funding?
2017-18,
250,000, if I'm not mistaken, we cut out of the capital funding in order to,
We did reduce it as we had determined that we would not complete one of the long-range facility plan items that we had anticipated last year doing this summer, so as to be able to manage the reduction. So yes, there was.
I misunderstood the question. Yes, from the original proposal, yes.
so this is in effect a further reduction to the capital budget, so we're borrowing Peter to pay Paul at this point in time. We're taking from the capital budget twice to next year.
You know, we have two reserves. We have a maintenance reserve that has 700,000, and we have a capital reserve that has 600,000, 600 plus thousand, and 700 plus thousand. They are reserves until the board budgets for projects with those money to our budget on. We made a motion in June to add up to 550,000 to the capital reserve fund. I anticipate having a surplus of closer to 300,000, not 550,000. If we do have a surplus of 300,000, the board made a motion to add that to the capital reserve. Then going forward in 18-19, we consider doing some more capital projects out of that reserve, maybe drainage, parking lot, west gym, some needed facility projects we might consider for 2 years down the road. We did not put any projects in the next year, this 17-18 budget. Did that answer your question? Okay.
So, of the 300,000 that would have gone in, now you're going to reduce it by another 128,000. So you're going to put in about 107,000.
No, 300,000 would be the end of the 16-17 budget.
Right.
This would be for the 17-18 budget. We have a 2% surplus right now. It's about 550,000 in a, not capital reserve, not maintenance reserve, but unreserved fund balance. There's 550,000 in there now. This would
For 17-18?
come out of that.
For 17-18?
17-18.
You already have $550,000 surplus, but you want to use 128,000 of this year's to next year's in addition. So you want to basically
The
a $700,000 surplus almost.
The 128 would come from the 550. would reduce the general fund balance by 128,000. So 550 minus the 128, 420.
I'm sorry if I'm not understanding. The 128,000 is the shortfall in funding from state for 17-18.
Correct.
We're voting on taking 128,000 from 16-17 that would go into the capital.
Well, there's general fund balance of 550,000. That's 2% of our budget.
What year are we talking about now?
That 2% pretty much sits there.
That doesn't have
That's
it
it,
here?
so-
It's a separate account than the capital reserve.
Right.
Yeah, it's operating. So
So you don't say it's
you're
being
saying we have approximately, on calendar year 16-17, approximately $300,000 surplus is your estimate.
But that's not.
That's going into capital reserve.
That's going into capital.
That's going into capital reserve. That's not the account that he's talking about. He's talking about the surplus that's budgeted always year after year at
Well, that's
550,000.
budget, so that's 17-18, and I'm getting that, I'm just trying to wrap up, we're closing on 16-17. We're saying we have approximately 300,000 left,
Correct.
and you want to take 128,000 of that and put it towards 17-18.
Now, the 128 would technically come from the 550. The 300,000 couldn't be added to the 550 because that would be beyond, more than 2% of the budget. So the 300,000 would go into capital reserve account for future capital projects. So they're separate.
So you're talking about funds for next year that's in the budget plan for next year,
Just not
that you're gonna cut that on.
That 550 would technically be reduced by 128. So
Okay, so-
technically it would be less than 2%
So
of
this
our.
is, you're not taking money from one year and shifting it to the next, you're just reducing the surplus for next year
Correct.
to the shortfall.
Correct.
I apologize, I misunderstood the motion.
So
I thought you were shifting money from this year into next year,
No, it would come from that,
from the surplus next year.
right, and that surplus has probably been there for, I don't know,
That
50
reserve,
years.
You've answered my question, I apologize.
that reserve account exists in every district based upon the accounting and the state DOE directives, correct?
Up until about 50 years ago, there was no limit on surplus. Then they put an 8% cap on it. Then they reduced it to 6%. Then they reduced it to 4%. Now it's been reduced in the past 6 years to 2%. And it's supposed to be for rainy day, for emergency.
Now, this 550,000 though, Jim, for 18-19, we could just go back to 550,000 again, right? It's not
Correct.
like it permanently reduces it.
Correct. And if we had any excess next, at the end of next
Put it
year,
back there.
the board would decide whether they wanted to bring it back up to 2%. That's the board decision next year.
Now, we would hope that if the state is going to reduce state aid again, that they would do it prior to budget season and not do the same thing they did this year, correct? Is that what we're hoping? But we don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
Is what we have in the reserve account, the manner in which we manage that reserve account in line with and the manner in which all other districts with whom you've done business manage their reserve account?
Yes, I've seen a number of districts use their budgeted fund balance where we seem to not use it, which is, I think, prudent.
I just wanna make sure that we're
I've
communicating that to
seen
the
districts have to use budgeted fund balance.
My question was that answer.
But to answer your question too, I think we should expect that we're gonna not
Next
get
year.
130 budget time, that we're not, when we have the
Yeah,
discussion.
we have-
So just confirm on the capital fund, the capital, capital was 700,000 prior to this past year. We're adding 300,000 into it, it's not gonna be touched. That's roughly,
600, maintenance reserve is 700.
okay.
Two separate reserves. But yes, the board voted to add it to the capital reserve, so if we added 300,000, that's account would be 900,000.
And the capital reserve account, which is the manner in which all districts must function, is the money from which you maintain and upgrade your facilities. And so we have to match any dollar we spend for capital upgrades or maintenance with the long-range facility plan, which must be maintained.
Every school is required to keep a long-range facility plan.
And if it does not appear on the long-range facility plan, you cannot allocate capital reserve dollars to complete that
But
task.
having that capital reserve also potentially prevents us from having to go out for debt.
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
And that's how when we talk about this is how we maintain the integrity of our facilities, and which is so important to this community. And some of the things on that facility plan are the maintenance of our driveways and our parking lots, and the West Gym, things of that nature.
Of the schools I've worked in, I have to say this school has the least debt that I've seen. It's very common for schools to be loaded with debt.
Any other discussion? All right, roll call.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Wojcik?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe?
Yes.
Mr. Beal?
Yes. All right, transportation, Mr. Miller.
You've all been waiting for, haven't you? How many pages I have here? Let's try to.
Read all the lines?
So I would like to move items, I believe it's 1 through 5. Just kind of go over them real quickly. So item number 1 is recommended by the superintendent that the board approves the following joint transportation agreements for the 2017-18 school year. Where Sussex Wantage is the host, High Point is the joiner, as listed. Item number 2, it's recommended by the board that the board approves the following quoted contracts for transportation of special needs students for the 2017-18 ESY program, as listed for D.W. Clark and Sons Incorporated. Item number 3, it is recommended by the superintendent that the board approves the following joint transportation agreements for the 2017-18 ESY program, where High Point Regional is the host and the joiner is Bayonne Board of Education. Where also High Point Regional High School is the host and Bloomfield Board of Ed is the joiner. Item number 4, it is recommended by the superintendent that the board approves the following renewal contracts for the transportation of students to and from school for the 2017-18 school year. I'm just going to say as listed, because we have many of them. And lastly, item number 5, it is recommended by the superintendent that the board approves the following renewal contracts for the transportation of students to and from school related activities for the 2017-18 school year. Again, as listed and as noted, there are many trips there, as you can see. Looking for a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Wojcik?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Ancliffe?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Beal?
Yes. All right, correspondence. Lafayette Township School District extended their gratitude and thanks to High Point Regional Board of Education and Dr. Ripley for allowing the development of a partnership to support the needs of all students. Lafayette Superintendent is Jennifer Senatiempo. Commended Dr. Ripley for his leadership and support in proactively addressing future High Point student needs and for allocating resources to assist the Lafayette District in providing for student needs and attachment. Miscellaneous. Public comments.
We don't
Seeing
have-
none, we can move on. Non-committee board member reports and comments. Anybody? No? Other business? We don't have any other business reports.
Okay, all right, okay. So I have no other business at this time.
All right. So we'll move on to adjournment. I need a motion.
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?